Yeah.
Okay, got that application in, but 8 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's cold morning. I think I'm really sad, summer though. We'll go ahead and get started with the introduction. Like that, behind Heather.
Hi, I'm Kelly Moriarty. I'm the National Resource Specialist with Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jen Wall. I'm the acting district conservationist for NRCS out of Surrey office.
Good morning, Heather Miller, Oregon State Fire Marshal.
Monty Damarel, Newberry Regional Partnership.
Claudia McDonald, Rim Rock West.
Jackie Nerski, Pacific Power.
Gary Marshall, Executive Director, Fire District 2.
Dean Richardson, Upper Shoots River Communities.
Greg Ron, Deschutes River Woods.
Lauren Street, Deschutes County Natural Resource Specialist.
Good morning, Nathan Garrity, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Robin Church, Summit West Neighborhood District and Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition.
Good morning, Kevin Moriarty, Deschutes County Forester.
Grant.
Oh, good morning, Grant Solich, Grantland Management Services.
All right.
Yeah, we got one more.
Oh, good morning, I'm Nick Leland, I'm the county administrator. For the last 4 years, I've had a conflict at this time. And now it finally got that move, so I just.
All right, and oh no, I'm here. And if you're joining us online, welcome, and please do your introduction in the chat. And so a couple announcements. Next month, after this meeting, we start at 10. We're gonna have our last, well, for the year, our last steering committee meeting. So if you hold a spot on our steering committee. If you can, please stay, or come back at 10 for that. It'll be here in this room. And then besides that, we have a new member on our steering committee, Grant Solich from Grantland Management has joined us in the private forestry position. And then Kevin or Lauren, do either of you have any announcements?
Lauren, you want to go first? Do grants.
Yeah. So grant stuff that we have going on right now. Excuse me, we have the fall fuel reduction applications open right now. Those open September 1st and they'll be open through September 30th. That is for community projects in Deschutes County that communities can apply. Most of our applications that we get are between $2,500 and $5,000. So that will be open until the end of September. We still have not heard back about the CWDG grant, Community Wildfire Defense Grant. That one is focused on the Lapine area. The last we heard is that they've made it through their review process and it could be late fall, but that has gotten bumped back twice now. So I'm hopeful that we'll hear by the end of the year, but I'm not totally sure. We also have a FEMA application out and we've only heard back from them once. But that is for a Deschutes County fuels reduction project that's countywide for a lot of fuels treatments. So hopefully we hear back about that one by the end of the year, but again, haven't heard anything. And then I have gotten a couple questions about the Ben rental program. That is separate from the fall fuel application that we have open right now, and we will be running the spring Ben rental program in 2026. So those are two separate applications. But yeah, we're got the fall fuel right now, and then we'll have the spring Ben rental in 2026.
I just had a few announcements. There's a couple things going on. The Oregon State Extension Service is doing a tree ID walk at the Metolius Preserve, October 11th. Their registration is open. Jenna Dyball would be the person to talk to about that. Registration is open until September 28th. But if anyone is interested in that, to learn more about tree identification, you can contact me or Janet directly. I know the emergency management program has put together a form for unmet needs. That's on their emergency management dashboard. Nathan, I don't know if you had anything else to say about that, but.
Yeah, if you want, we have on our emergency management dashboard, which is the same one you go to for maps and alerts, for evacuation, there's a recovery tab. And on that recovery tab is a list of resources available to folks and information related to, primarily because of the flat fire, but we envision that being something that would be adaptable to any event, where there's structure loss or significant loss of structure. So as a part of that, we developed an unmet needs form where people can fill out, and because we're well aware of the structures that were lost, but there might be some other impacts, for example, like significant amount of fencing or something like that, people might have uninsured, and we'll try to direct them to a resource. So that's just an example. But yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan, for providing information. And then just lastly, our bin rental or our dumpster program has kind of wrapped up. We did get a few dumpsters that were out there later than we anticipated. So we need to make sure next year that when we state that the grant is funding May through June, that's when we have the bins out there. We've been trying to work with the companies to make sure that the bins are getting collected. But we should have sufficient funding for that next year, at least 75,000. I just need to do the numbers now to figure out how much we have for that. But again, like Lauren was saying, that program will be out next winter, spring. Okay, that's all I had for updates.
Thank you. All right, so this morning we are hosting Bill Tyler from Fire Safe Marin. And Bill, whenever you're ready, can go ahead and share your screen and take over.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Bill Tyler. I am just a little bit about myself. I'm the retired fire chief from the Novato Fire Protection District, which is in Marin County. So my career spans over 30 years here in California, in Marin County, native Californian. I do have a connection with Oregon, though. My brother, who is a police officer, retired police officer, is up in Grants Pass, and they had a fire just recently that caused evacuation of their home. So, my mom got one policeman, one fireman in the family. So, can everyone see my screen all right, where it says Fire Safe Marin?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I just wanted to share, I'm the executive director of Fire Safe Marin, and this is a fire safe council. We're one of the original fire safe councils in the country. But I wanted to share with you, because there's a lot that's going on here in Marin County that we're all trying to come together to, mitigate and prevent fires, the unwanted effects of fires. So I just wanted to kind of share, what brought us here, the why behind everything that we're doing. And this is a slide from the Headwaters report, that just talking about fires are bigger, burning longer, more damaging, and killing more people than ever before. And in my career, we knew this to be true. And even as early as 2016, 2017, people didn't really believe this yet. They didn't quite understand it. We had to go through a series of slides and information that demonstrated why this was true. But I think now, given also what's happened down in Southern California earlier in the year at the Palisades and Eaton fire, people really get this. Post Tubbs fire, post Camp Fire, Palisades and Eaton, people really understand that this is true, and there's a lot more interest than ever before. And I just, by example, history is going to repeat itself. And so what I've shown here on the map is a fire called the Tubbs Fire that was in 2017. This was the big wake-up call for the Bay Area that got a lot of things in motion that I want to talk about. But there's two fire perimeters here, one in red and one in black. So the Tubbs Fire is the 2017 fire that a lot of people know about. It started in Tubbs Road in Calistoga and burned to and through Coffee Park. But the perimeter in red is the Hanley Fire, and that occurred in 1964. So the wind, fuel, and topography have lined up previously, and I'm sure your group is well aware that these fires are going to repeat themselves. We're going to have the type of weather conditions, low humidity and wind that are going to drive these fires. So the difference between these two fires is the Hanley Fire in 64 took 3 days to burn that footprint. There's a lot less resources that we could send in to respond and put the fire out. The Tubbs Fire burned in approximately 5 hours and 15 minutes in and through. So the point here is that these fires that have perimeters are going to repeat themselves. This is a powerful tool to be able to share with your public that may motivate them to try and build in resiliency and fire adaptation to their communities. Other histories of fire here in Marin, we have the same perimeters. We have the same types of footprints. You just have to go back far enough to see these things. And this is just an example, kind of ripped from the headlines, the types of fires that we've had. But to put some of this stuff in perspective, the largest fire, which is sort of that top image, was a fire that burned from Nevada, which is where I was fire chief, all the way out, actually burned to the sea to Bolinas. So about 40,000 acres. And to put this in perspective, the Palisades and the Palisades and the Eaton fires together was just a little over 50,000 acres. So this was one fire that was 40,000 acres. And, when it burned at that time, it was millions of dollars that were lost. But if that same fire burns today, we're looking at, over 5,000 structures, and it would be a $4.9 billion loss. Similarly, with the Great Fire Mill Valley that burned down the slopes of Mount Tam, a famous fire, 25,000 acres, 110 structures destroyed at that time, and today, closer to 12,000 structures would be 1.3 billion. And then similarly, Lagunitas and Envision Fire, which I was in Marin at that time, you can see that we have the problem that the Tubbs Fire had, that the problem that you also have. And this is just a quick map that shows fires that have occurred in Marin, since the early 1900s that were over 500 acres. And it basically covers all of Marin County. So strong reasons for us to be motivated to take action. Quick little history, and I apologize if some of the writing is slow, but I wanted to show you a timeline. Back in 1991 was the Oakland Hills Fire. Probably a lot of you had heard about that, also known as the Tunnel Fire. That fire had also burned before in the early 20s, all the way down to UC Berkeley, to the Campanile building tower that's there. And that incident is what formed Fire Safe Marin as one of the first fire safe councils in the country. The fire agencies got together, and I don't know if you recall hearing anything about that fire, but it was a point where when our fire engines went over, and not really as strike teams, just as individual resources, the fittings on our intakes and on the hydrant hose did not connect to their hydrants. I mean, we learned a lot about and things that needed to change in order to actually become an effective, mutual aid resource. But so lots of changes have been occurring over these times. 1995 was a Vision Fire. All of the fire agencies started equipping around wildfires. We greater participation in the Master Mutual Aid System. After that, 2003 was the Cedar Fire down in San Diego, at that time the largest fire in California history. It actually killed one of our firefighters, Stephen Rucker, who I worked with when I was hired as a firefighter paramedic on an ambulance. I knew Steve and his family. And there was a Blue Ribbon Commission report that came out immediately after that. Governor Schwarzenegger and a ton of hearings about what needed to be done differently. And buried in the appendix is ordinances that needed to change around hardening, wildland urban interface, mapping that needed to be done. And so we took that very seriously. A lot of changes to our strike teams, every firefighter, getting a radio, proper PPE, a lot of changes occurred out of that. And we started doing fire hazard severity zone mapping about the same time. That was around 2005 to 2007 that started occurring. We identified our wildland urban interface areas in 2005 and started to have more restrictive ordinances for our built environment. So Marin County is largely built out. There's an urban growth boundary where we can't build into open spaces. So a lot of the construction now, the higher density is within these boundaries, and they're going to be in interface areas. And so it's important that we were building smarter, more ignition resistant construction, better water systems, ingress, egress, secondary access, all those sorts of things started showing up in ordinances so that we could begin to apply them to this new construction. But also what's a key that some of you may have been contemplating is because we're a built environment, we needed our ordinances to apply to the existing non-conforming combustible construction areas. And so we wrote into the ordinances substantial remodel provisions that meant when people who live in wildland urban interface areas, when they change their roof, their vents, their eaves, their decks, they're required to use ignition resistant construction, so that the state's requirement of ignition resistant construction that's found in Chapter 7A of the Building Code only applies to new construction. So it's by local ordinance, by local action that's driving the actual changes that are needed in the community, because we're really focused now in Marin County on two things: survivability of structures and insurability of homes for the community's benefit. Those are the two main drivers, and people are paying attention to those things now as they're losing their insurance, as you probably are having the same thing happen to you. So 2005, again, we had those ordinances. We had mutual threat zone plans across fire agencies. Evacuation zones were better identified. We started to participate in the FireWise communities in 2009, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's that national program you're probably aware of. We started adding fire detection cameras on the mountaintops. In 2014, we only had 4. We're up to 9 now. We adopted our first community wildfire protection plan in 2016, which was very helpful and timely. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then evacuation procedures are working with our law enforcement partners much more closely in 2017, because that's when the Tubbs fire occurred up in Santa Rosa, and people really became aware of what needed to be done. And of course, then 2017, we did a lessons learned report. So let me talk about these fundamental building blocks that drove change here in Marin County. The first is a community wildfire protection plan. You likely have those in various communities. Ours is trying to be science-driven. We're in the process right now of doing an update where we're adding additional modeling, resilient roads, the work that we're doing to do assessments of every home. All of that data is being input so that we're trying to have a continuously updated community wildfire protection plan rather than doing it once every 5 years. So that's a collaborative approach that focuses on prioritized projects and then reducing structural ignitability. At the same time, there was a lessons learned report. So when the Tubbs fire occurred and burned, the Board of Supervisors came to all the fire chiefs and said, let's get officials from those areas, Santa Rosa and in Sonoma County, and let's figure out what went well, what didn't go well, and let's do a gap analysis with Marin County. So as a result of that, we ended up with the 2018 lessons learned report. And at the same time, we have a very robust grand jury system here in Marin County, and they are constantly looking at government and trying to figure out how we can do things better, calling to question findings and recommendations. And so they happened to do a grand jury report in 2019, and they found that agencies needed to work more closely together, and they needed funding to be able to do this, not to be relied upon grants, which are hit and miss, many of the vegetation projects that we were doing, there weren't funds to, go in and keep those areas cleaned up afterwards. And so we were competing with each other around those types of grants. So those were some of their findings. So, as a result, what happened was we formed the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is a joint powers authority here. It's this blue thing here, Joint Powers Authority, funded by Measure C, which is a property tax measure for 10 years. There's a sunset in it. And so it's up to us to demonstrate the program's worth. It's essentially a parcel tax that brings in approximately $22 million a year for 10 years. So $220 million over 10 years that we control, that we don't have to compete with other agencies. We prioritize projects across 5 zones in the county and get work done on detection, notification, improvements, alert and warning, vegetation management. We have grant programs as incentives to help people with home hardening and vegetation management, fuels reduction within their defensible space zone, and then assessments. Agencies use a number of different tools, wildfire mitigation specialists and inspectors that inspect all properties on a 2 or 3 year cycle with a report that identifies the hazards that those homeowners need to mitigate. And then the Fire Safe Marin, which is I'm the executive director of now, we basically are the education and outreach arm of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. So we existed as a Fire Safe Council before, and we were made up of all the, similar to what you're doing, all, fire agencies, land management folks, interested members of the public, firewise communities, et cetera, sat on this board, but we always had to go after grants and we're competing and it was just not an effective way for us to implement quickly what needed to be done and uniformly across the county. So Fire Safe Marin, we'll go into details about some of our areas that we focus on and the collaborations that we have. But I also just want to mention that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority basically is all the cities and towns, 17 cities and towns in Marin County that came together. They, of course, are responsible for emergency management, the local ordinances, the D-space and home evaluations, et cetera. But they also have their own messaging and things, but we work with those agencies to try and standardize the messaging. And then what's also a strong partner is our our Firewise communities. We have over 81 now in our small county, and that really amplifies the message. And they will show up and turn out for political purposes to help push wildfire prevention mitigation. So we try and maximize their use and help coordinate them. So just a little bit before I move off into more of what Fire Safe Marin is all about, Marin Wildfire, this is a flip book that we put together. Let me see if I can get this to go. Can you guys still see this as a flip book?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're trying to amplify for the community to tell them what the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is, because we want all of the work to be magnified and recognized. And we would like, we're 5 years into this 10-year venture, and we want to make sure that the public will continue to support it under another tax measure, that we'll probably have to start ramping up in the next, 2 years or so. But, demonstrating and showing the shaded fuel break work, the evacuation clearances that are done through the vegetation management, our partnership with Ecologically Sound Practices, which is a group that brings all of the environmental groups together, that we found they're not fighting what they're doing, they're supporting what we're doing, because we take a house out approach and focus around, what people can do on, again, reducing structural ignitability. It's sort of, you think of a bullseye on a dartboard, the center is the home itself. That's what needs to be protected. And then moving out in concentric circles, you're talking about your home, then your yard, then your neighbors, then your neighborhood, and then your community as you expand outside of that. And we're focused basically on from the house out. We talk about the benefits of the wildfire risk and home evaluations and some of the common issues that we're finding. We're amplifying the partnerships between the fire agencies. We're talking about community taking action, the outreach programs that we have, the grant programs that incentivize people to do the work for both home hardening and vegetation fuel reduction, chipper programs that remove tons of vegetation around people's homes, and then again, amplifying that partnership. All of the cities and towns, fire agencies, along with all of the residents, that is really who Marin Wildfire is. So let me try and click out of this without losing my presentation. Can you guys still see this as Marin Wildfire?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to shift into Fire Safe Marin because this is what I was asked to talk about a little bit too. So again, we're a fire safe council. We're a nonprofit established back in 1992 following the tunnel fire in Berkeley. And then in 2020, 2021, we expanded with the creation of the MWPA and funding. We handle that public education and outreach. So about 5% a year of the funding gets placed to Fire Safe Marin to work on these outreach and educational programs. We have over 103,000 households in Marin County, so it's about $11 or so per household is what the breakdown is. 260,000 residents. We're sort of a oak woodland, coastal terrain, a lot of wildland urban interface. Over 2/3 of all of the properties in Marin County are in wildland urban interface areas. And, basically we're just trying to empower the residents to prepare for wildfire. This is a picture of our team that works on this day in and day out, mostly part-time. There's a couple full-time people, again, nonprofit, trying to maximize and reinvest back into the community with all of our messaging. 12 programmatic areas that you see, the PSAs. I'm going to kind of go through some of these things, but 12 areas that we're really focusing on this outreach with materials. And this is really, these numbers that you see here are what happens in a year. So from our website, which is just a wealth of resources, and I would encourage all of you to go to firesafemarin.org. Just this year alone, close to 200,000 users of the material come and visit the website. We've got over 42 partnerships with local collaborations going on, and 20,000 engagements this year. That means our tabling events. We have ambassadors that we train that go out and, all kinds of different places, farmers markets, food hubs, events, neighborhood gatherings where we meet the public. And we train our ambassadors to go out and meet people where they are. We want them to be very empathetic about people when they come up and they have their questions. Then we offer solutions after, listening to what they have to say, offer up solutions that they can take actions. And that's that 4-step process. Our ambassadors, we train, they have quarterly trainings, regular check-ins, and we have hundreds of tabling events that occur every year. We have a lot of printed materials also that are out there. As you can see, there's this display, we call these little kiosks, and we have about 12 of these now in different, hardware stores, places where people gather and landscape places where people actually need to take action. And there's 2 copies here, and I'm gonna place these when I'm done talking. I'll place these assets into the chat so you can download them and take a look at them. But how to create fire smart yards and then retrofitting a home. So when you walk into a hardware store or building materials, you're confronted with the opportunity to take one of these flyers and then to go through, and you can actually, purchase items right there. There's low-hanging fruit for everyone, inexpensive items that they can do to begin to harden their homes to reduce the ignitability. Then we've got a ton of streaming videos that are out there. Wildfire Watch, which is sort of like a talk show that we do. It's like a podcast almost. Fixing the Risk. We have, when the assessments are done on homes, they get an electronic report. And let's say that, their zones, they've got we're trying to amplify zone 0 right now, which is a 0 to 5 foot clearance around homes, which California is about to pass a law around that. We're waiting on the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection to come up with the final language there. But anyway, when they find something wrong with the report, we've done a video, whether it's decks, siding, roofs, etc. We've got a short video that people can watch about how to fix that problem, and they can decide whether they want to take that on. Also, some other digital and print things. Earlier, I showed you this is Marin Wildfire. That's what everyone is doing for the community. We also have this digital piece called Imagine that I want to show you. This is what people need to do for themselves. And so we break these down into actions about reducing structural ignitability, maintaining their yards, and then being ready to having a plan, go bag, evacuation route, etc. And so this is the part of the public education. This is just one example of how we reach out to them, that they have to live with fire. We want to become a more fire adaptive community, and these small changes are going to make a big difference. Introducing them to zone 0 in that non-combustible home. A lot of people want to look over the fence and see what's going on, what's wrong with their neighbor's yard and what's not with theirs. So we talk about that house out approach and what they need to do, strategies ahead of a wildfire. Their yard really matters. So this zone 0, taking care of their yard. Now I'm going to go into a little more detail about their yards in a second. But joining Firewise communities, this is a huge thing that we need them to do. We're actually finding that in our Firewise communities, there is a third greater acknowledgement and recognition of hazards and then reduction of those hazards. When we have a chipper, it's 3.5 times the volume of material is taken out of Firewise neighborhoods, because these are people that recognize, they've been informed, they have a plan, they have an action plan, they're executing that plan, and that's showing up as 33% more action and activities. So we want to expand on those Firewise communities. We want everyone to join one of those. And then we talk about our annual festival, Ember Stomp, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and then that evacuation readiness, signing up for their alerts and notifications, understanding and having a plan about evacuations. And then again, trying to inform the communities about what we do, Fire Safe Marin, what we are, Marin Wildfire, and then of course our Office of Emergency Management, and then all the different agencies here, along with live links to their websites, phone numbers, and addresses. So that's important to show you. Another thing here that I want to show you is on the Fire Smart Yards. I don't know if any of you have seen this. This is a guide that answers that question around zone 0 about aesthetic. Because a lot of people feel like if they remove things out 5 feet, that it's going to be really ugly, and they don't want things to look like that. They love the look of their home right now. So we're trying to show people examples of what beautiful can look like in their homes and educate them at the same time. And so again, 90% of the home ignitions are from brands and embers. We're still trying to explain that to people. And when these brands and embers are landing in their landscapes, they are what's causing the fire. But through this document here, and I'll put this in the chat also, we try and inform them of zone 0, the plant spacing, the mulch matters, the tree care, talking about privacy screening, because this is really important to people, and then plant choice and how that matters. And so this is in English and in Spanish, which is important to our communities here, that we, be able to share this message across multiple, languages. And what this document also reminds me of is sort of Sunset Magazine. I'm kind of aging myself now, but we used to grab that and we'd look when we bought our house, and we'd look and see how we'd want to make things look beautiful. So, these things are beautiful, and there's small elements that people can take. Some of these things look like they're in high-end, multi-million-dollar homes, but there are elements that are appropriate for everyone. So we're just showing examples of how, you can have beautiful gardens, you can break up the fuel continuity, you can have zone 0, you can have ignition resistant construction, and these all can work together to help reduce the ignitability of structures in these different ways. Different patterns, textures, these really can begin to appeal to people so that they can understand that it can be beautiful and effective at the same time. We educating about the house clearance, what's important there, the attractiveness of zone 0, and then extending that plant spacing beyond, what does beyond 5 foot look like? Well, there's still different spacing, breaking up fuel continuity, hardened landscapes with pathways and all these things. And these things can look beautiful. We talk about sloping, ladder fuels, that mulch matters, showing how they can have different types of mulches and that break up fuel continuity and also preserve water for the plants, etc. There was a study that was done of different mulch types and burn rates that was done by Steve Quarles, who's on our board. Scientists work with IBHS, and so we're demonstrating to people through scientific means what's good and what's not good. We love trees. We're not asking people to get rid of trees. We're just asking them to limb them up, prune them back. Examples of shaded fuel breaks that run into condominium apartment buildings on a slope. It can look beautiful and park-like, and also be much more fire safe. Again, beautiful park-like shaded fuel breaks. We talk about plants and keeping them thinned out, how brands and nimbers can go through the tree branches and don't have to get stuck and hung up in those trees. The private screening. Again, I'm spending a little time showing you this because it's a big deal being able to answer the aesthetic part of the equation. We still don't want to have people having fire-prone plants, juniper, cypress, bamboo, etc. So we talk about the ignitability there, but there's also on slopes, the terracing, breaking up fuel continuity, and again, the partnerships that we have. So I hope I'm not taking up too much time on this one, but it's so important to have high quality professional materials that people can look at and go, okay, I begin to see what it is that you're talking about. Our outreach by the numbers this is just this year alone, 5 million touch points. Our web pages have been viewed 325,000 times. We produce 50 videos, 24,000 viewing hours, 500 social media posts across all these different, paid advertising, the social media, the Firewatch programs with our stakeholders, printed materials we covered. The videos, high quality, 500,000 views just this year alone. So we know that we are a place that people are coming to view the materials, and I invite you to do the same thing, because you've got to get people to act, right? And you have to meet people in all these different areas. Like YouTube is viewed by men more than women. It's very interesting when you begin to break down, and you find which platform connects with which people. The Marin mommies, the schools, the messaging that you have to pick to match with that group so that it connects with them, and they can just begin to integrate pieces of those things into their lives. These programs are also award winning, so we know the quality, not just the quantity of the work that we're doing is important. Again, I'm just going to kind of go through, and I want to make sure there's time for questions too. So I don't want to go too fast through these things, but I want to just give examples of both in English and Spanish. The digital, we put together these sort of toolkits for fire agencies to grab the pieces that they want to amplify the messaging. We try to co-brand with all of our fire agencies, because the communities do have a trust with our fire department. So when they see the fire department logo on the materials, they're more likely to open and engage with those materials. So the co-branding is super important, while also building the brand of Fire Safe Marin, just like you have a brand for your organization. Again, these various materials that we have in Spanish, videos. Working in the schools, we have a program called Get Ready 5th Grade that incorporates wildfire prevention and mitigation. And we also have high school programs where we have some of our volunteer and staff work with students with these groups in one of our high schools, where they have clubs that actually begin to do their own tabling event, and they're trying to interact with kids at their level to promoting wildfire preparedness. Our demographics, again, 260,000 is our population, 81 Firewise sites, 60,000 Firewise residents in those sites. And remember, I told you again, this is a 30% increase in recognition of hazard and those reductions, taking advantage of the grants, taking advantage of chipper days, 207 volunteer hours. And this is for Firewise, $12.6 million is their contribution. That's what they report back to the NFPA when they do their renewals. $12.6 million of work that they're doing on top of all this other work that we're doing. We coordinate, as a Fire Safe Council, we coordinate leader meetings with them. So 81 Firewise groups, we get about 56 Firewise leaders per month at these meetings. And, we ask them to do these universal activities. They build a contact list. They do neighborhood walks. So they, as a group, they walk around and see where their risks are. They hold an evacuation drill every year. They work with the local fire departments. They're sharing wildfire preparedness education materials. They have regular meetings, and that they promote the Chipper Days. That's what we ask all of them to do. And then Ember Stomp is a festival that we have. This is our 4th year. We just had it on September 6th. 6,000 people attend. We've got burn demos, volunteers, sponsorships. We raised about $85,000 in sponsorships to help us put on this event. We had just a tremendous turnout with vendors. So if people, basically any question that you have about wildfire prevention, mitigation, response and recovery is here at this event, with insurance industry, United policyholders are there, survivors of fires that talk about recovery efforts. Just a massive interest in this growing festival, where we try and celebrate people to embrace fire adaptive communities. So again, that is the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'll go ahead and I can add the presentation into the comments, and also any of the other pieces that you'd like to see. So I'm open for questions if you have any. And I hope I answered the questions that you, or at least address some of the issues and questions that you had about what we're doing here in Marin County.
Thank you. We have any questions, Laura?
It sounded like you said something about mulch that made me think there's a kind that's okay. No.
Yeah. I mean, they have different burn rates and different characteristics based on the type of mulch that you have. And so it is possible to have like composted mulch actually burns more slowly with lower flame heights. And you should still have mulch in your gardens. You just need to break up the continuity of the fuel that goes towards the structure, right? And so you can do that through a variety of different mulches. And so on our website is the study itself. You can go and read that study, that scientific study, and make decisions. Like, what we really don't want to see are the shredded redwood kind of mulches in yards. Certainly don't want to see synthetic, rubber mulches, those types of things. But it's possible to have beautiful landscape gardens that are also fire protective that include mulch.
I would say, juniper mulch would not be ideal in Deschutes County. So we're trying to get rid of our juniper here.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And in fact, we worked with one of our mobile home parks through a grant to do a vegetation management plan. And part of that identified all of the juniper that was in their community. And so over about 3 years, they had this big map up in their clubhouse that showed where all the juniper was. So every time people came in and out of the clubhouse, they saw that where all the juniper was. And it became a very visible way of them recognizing that they needed to get rid of this. And what would happen was, when they removed the juniper, they would put gold. They would put gold and fill in where the juniper was with gold, and it created a peer pressure for other people to remove their juniper as well. And I'm happy to report that virtually all of the juniper has been removed, from close to 300 manufactured homes that live in this one community as a result of that one action.
And this is Commissioner Adair, Deschutes County. And actually, I worked on funding we got $5.2 million, which is nothing, for 7 counties here in Central Oregon. But we have approximately 6 million junipers that need to be taken out because they're sucking up 55,000 billion gallons of water a year, plus their flammability. And we had over 21,000 properties that were high risk per the map that was eliminated after the fact. So anyway, we have a serious problem here. Of that money, $585,000 is for Deschutes County. Unfortunately, in the legislation, it was for people that have 100 acres. So what I've asked people to do is join with your neighbors so that you can get rid of more junipers and you can meet that 100-acre minimum that the legislation has in it. It's
Great, yeah, great.
so no, we seriously have a juniper problem. 80 years ago, there were no junipers between Redmond and Sisters. And now people just think they're part of our landscape, but no, they really weren't 80 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could, you know, if your local elected officials, you know, through the work of your fire departments can, you know, create ordinances. In San Rafael, they created an ordinance that identified certain, you know, highly flammable plants, and they required those plants to be removed retroactively from people's homes that are in, you know, suburban residential neighborhoods. And they did it over a 5-year period where it started out with education and it ended up with enforcement. But they did that through local ordinance and it passed. And so, you know, it takes political will and courage to do that, but you can effectively remove those things and place the responsibility on the homeowners to remove it.
Plus the fact that people's insurance is being canceled is the other unfortunate circumstance in like Sisters where there were only a couple carriers left and now we have this other fire. So who knows what the impact, are there going to be 3 carriers left in another 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening here. You're exactly right. I mean, that's why I say insurability and survivability, those two things, like people can agree on that. They want their home to survive and they want insurance. Right. And they're going to have to take action. It cannot be business as usual. You know, back to that fire perimeter that I showed you, the fire is going to come. It's going to reburn. What difference have you made in your community so that you don't have that catastrophic loss? You will likely still lose structures. I mean, some of the actuarial studies that are being done right now are showing that between, like, if you took 100 homes that were backed up into an interface area or where wildlands meet, you know, homes, you would need to see at least 30% of those homes take those fire adaptive steps with the home hardening and the fuel reduction around their homes. You need 30% for there to be actuarial significant change or safety within that particular neighborhood, all the way up through about 80%. At 80% and beyond, it's insignificant difference. But that fire will come. That fire is going to burn again. So the difference, the delta, is what the homeowner does on their property to change so that you don't become an urban conflagration in those suburban areas, and that your home can survive. It makes a big difference. The science is telling us what to do. It is correct. And if we can follow that, if we can convince people, you know, over time to make these changes, survivability and insurability will come together and will be a reality for them.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for your presentation and wonderful everything that you are doing and getting accomplished in Fire Safe Marin. I have a question for you regarding building codes and the adoption of code that also extends to existing homes, encouraging people to retrofit.
Yeah.
Within Deschutes County, within some of our major cities such as Bend and Sisters, there is an effort now underway to review codes in a comprehensive fashion. I anticipate, based on personal discussions with developers, that there will be pushback from builders. And the code discussions that have been taking place, or the focus at this point, is on new construction, not existing homes and retrofits.
That's right.
Can you help me understand how Marin County overcame, challenges, roadblocks put up by developers and even, residents who aren't on board with something like this?
Yeah, sure. So again, we tried to do it in a way that was not retroactively applied, but still is applied going forward. So what we did was we took the the I codes, which are the international codes, are adopted in California with their local amendments. And I'd be happy to go through that process for anyone that's interested in it. But basically, once the code is identified, and in this case, back in 2005 is when we did this, following the 2003 Cedar Fire that I mentioned when we lost one of our firefighters. There's a lot of, again, the Cedar Fire was the largest fire in California history, and the Blue Ribbon Commission report was pointed at, we did not want this to happen again, right? And so what we did was we adopted the Wildland Urban Interface Code. It was an I code, and we amended that to include substantial remodels. And so we had a map of our wildland urban interface areas, and we said it will apply this substantial remodel provision so that people that live in this area that abut the open space areas, which again for us was about 11,000 parcels, that when they change, everybody eventually is going to change their siding. They're eventually going to change their windows, their roofs, their decks, their eaves. This stuff, eventually gets changed. And when they change it, they have to change it to ignition resistant construction that's consistent with the Chapter 7A of the building code, which is in California anyway, which is for that new construction. It's the reduced ignition provisions of construction. So what we began to do is see that as people made these changes, and it's permit driven largely, right? Because that's how do you know someone's going to have this work done? So if they change their siding on a wall, we just made them, if they did more than 50%, more than half of the exterior thing, then they had to make the whole thing ignition resistant construction. And the price of the materials has dropped substantially. There's far more products that are available in the community now than there were before that are beautiful, that also can, if you have a shaked sided home like my brother has in Grants Pass, there are non-combustible variations of that still look like shingles. And eventually he's going to have to replace his siding. And when he does, my recommendation to him is to get ignition resistant siding, right? And so you can see a transformation over time. So we have now 20 years of that ordinance in effect. So as people make these changes, you are hardening your community, right? So you're doing it over time. I don't know when the fire is going to come again, but I do know in those homes that have made these changes, those homes have a much greater chance of surviving than the homes that don't. So it was done just little by little. We worked with our building officials. All of the fire chiefs have fire prevention officers that meet monthly, and they try to link up their ordinances to all be the same. The other thing with your builders is they should see this as an opportunity. This, just like our ADUs, where we have such a housing density issue here, more and more housing needs to be built. And there was a real market for those contractors that recognize that, these ADU units, these small units could be built. And the ones that position themselves to know how to build them, to navigate the ordinances and requirements, made a killing on building these things. The same thing is true with substantial remodel and hardening. Those builders that understand how this is what needs to be done to help protect communities in the future so that they can survive and be insured, they're going to position themselves to make a killing in this market because they're going to be out front offering what people are going to begin asking for because they need it to keep their insurance, right? So we've reached out to our Marin Association of Realtors and to our Marin Builders Exchange. We're currently creating a program based on that fix a risk where we're educating through a certificate program the contractor so that they understand the why behind the ignition resistant construction, so that they understand that when they come in and talk with a homeowner, they understand what needs to be done for their home. And we're also educating the homeowners at the same time so they actually get installed what's needed to protect their homes. So it can be done incrementally, and it can be done with the builders, with the realtors on board. If you have the conversations and you show them the long-term benefit they need to get a loan to buy a house. They can't get, if they can't insure the property, or if it's super high, that's a problem. So if you make the home ignition resistant in the construction, if you start chipping away at these hazards, you're actually increasing the property value, not decreasing it.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for presenting today. A lot of material. We in Deschutes County have an increasing number of Firewise sites. The way I understand the program, there's minimum amounts that need to be done to qualify and continue as a Firewise site. But what are the main things that you've done to maximize the amount of work that gets done on the ground in these Firewise sites, beyond the minimum, so that they can really get up to speed? Otherwise, I envision that it could take years before a substantial change is made in a community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on. You usually get the people that want to form the Firewise communities are usually the early adopters of this stuff. They recognize it and want to take action. In Marin County, they're also generally the more veteran population, if you will. They're usually 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds. It's hard to capture younger, growing families that will stop and pay attention to this sort of thing because they're busy with their lives. But what we do is we have monthly meetings of all of the leaders, and we talk about best practices. I mentioned earlier in my presentation, what we ask of them is to, try and get a list of all the people, their contact information of those folks that are in their neighborhoods. A Firewise neighborhood can be, I think it's between something like 8 homes all the way up to like 2,500 homes or something like that. There's a range of size. And then they have to have an assessment done of that area. They have to come up with an action plan. They have to hold at least one event every year, and then they have to track their matching contribution of work, whether it's volunteer hours or projects that they do on their own. They have to track that and show that they've substantially made a dollar amount investment in their neighborhood. So we help them become Firewise by walking them through the application process. We share with them those best practices. We help them with their renewals. We meet with them monthly. All of the information that we create, public education outreach, gets pushed out to these Firewise leaders that then gets amplified and pushed out to all of the neighborhoods. We're setting up block captains that help organize around evacuation. They learn to know their neighbors, to meet their neighbors, and there's a lot of positive kind of community reinvestment feeling that they get from that, and so that will drive them for a while. Some of our Firewise communities have renewed 5 years in a row. Some of them are getting a little burnt out and tired because people aren't taking the actions, but we just try and persist with information shared in caring ways, and try and get more people involved, some succession planning for these groups so that they can continue. But we know that it's being effective because when we send in chippers to those neighborhoods, like I said, 30% more volume comes out of a Firewise neighborhood than in another neighborhood. Right, so that we know that it's being effective, that they're listening. We know that when homes in Firewise neighborhoods have an assessment done, that they're opening their reports, that they're identifying what various hazards are, and they're beginning to remove those hazards, the ones that they can afford. And we can demonstrate that back through the reports when there's a reinspection that work has actually been captured. And then we compare that against non-Firewise neighborhoods, and we see the work that's being done. So we know that we need to invest more time and energy. We actually have one person that's a 3/4 time that we fund to coordinate with those Firewise groups so that we can stay in contact, keep them energized, part cheerleader, part educator, part hand holder, until they're self-sustaining.
Thank you very much.
And those Firewise groups also become our ambassadors at tabling events. So they're basically converted, if you will, to the fire prevention mitigation messaging. They understand it, and then they can go tell their neighbors. A lot of times people don't want to go talk to an official because they feel like, oh, my house is going to get inspected, and then, information is going to be known and I'm going to lose my insurance. But they will go up and talk to a Fire Safe Marin booth that's at all these different activities, and they'll talk to someone that they feel like they have questions. And this is a neighbor, I'm talking to my neighbor, or someone who's been there and done that, and they feel comfortable doing that. So that's another way that the Firewise, communities can engage with the broader community.
Okay, this is Greg Bryant, and appreciate your comments as you presented it. Now, I've got, normally a fire happens in the forest every 10 to 12 years or something like that. It's about what kind of forest it is. Now, we're building more and more homes in the forest. And so my question is how are we keeping the vegetation down in the forest when the lightning strikes or somebody starts a fire in the forest that doesn't come into, our residences? I mean,
yeah, right.
What's happening is the fact that we got more and more vegetation there than we did normally, because the fires would go through. Now we're stopping the fires from happening, which I understand, but then that means the small vegetation underneath all the trees are getting more and more flammable.
Yeah, right. So you're exactly right. I mean, the policies around fire suppression were very aggressive, and for good reason, right? We wanted to get the fire put out and kept as small as possible, and fire agencies got really good at that. But what happened is that there's a tremendous buildup of dead material, and those forests are unhealthy. And so if fire is not going to be the tool that nature intended to help maintain those healthy forests, then we need to go in and either do that mechanically, or we need to try and have as light a touch as possible, or in some cases reintroduce fire through prescribed burns back into the landscape. But if you focus on the house out, where people can manage their own properties, what will force them to do that is, well, first of all, if they do it voluntarily because of the information, that's the best, right? And that's what we're trying to get people to do, that on their own. But then secondarily to that, it's by ordinance. You have to have requirements that cause people to have to remove the fuel, and you want dead and down out. You want, highly flammable vegetation types that are generally non-native. You want those out, right? And then you're going to expand out into shaded fuel breaks at the outside of the community. So once the homes are taken care of within their own defensible space, their home is hardened, going out 5 feet, and then the next 30 feet, next 100 feet. And then, if neighbors that are within 100 feet or so, or I know you've got probably ranches and people spread out a lot more. I actually think that's actually a good thing, because you won't get into the urban conflagration if people take the vegetation management on their properties very seriously. But again, you're going to try and share with them the science and why it's important to do. Then you're going to have ordinances and requirements that get more restrictive, that force them to do that. And then lastly, it's the insurability part. If they're going to lose their insurance, they either have to do it or they're going to lose their insurance. So, and it becomes super important to them. So you can invest those dollars in prevention mitigation, or you can pay 3 times, 10 times your insurance rates to an insurance company. Which would you prefer to do?
Thank you very much for presenting today, Bill. Wildfire affects not only residential, but it affects commercial, industrial, retail. Do you have any kind of a program that reaches out to those areas to help promote Firewise communities within their employees to go back to creating wildfire or Firewise communities?
I think that's a great idea. I have heard that before. We have not started in that area. We do have the same programs of assessments of residents. applies to commercial structures as well. So the funding that comes in through Measure C, that property tax also applies to commercial buildings. And so they also have the same opportunity to have, grants done, the assessments done. Generally, commercial property, especially when you've got property management companies, they're much easier to just get that stuff out, creating zone zero. A lot of them understand that they need to do that, but we haven't yet taken it to the kind of the Firewise point yet. So I think that's an interesting thing to explore more. I will say this, what we have done is through grants, some of our fires, actually all of the fire stations in Novato, which there are 5 stations plus an administration building, we created zone zero with defensible space. That is, we are walking the talk. So we aren't asking other buildings to do what we won't do for our own fire stations. And our headquarters is in a commercial industrial park that is part of the healthcare system. The hospital's right down the street. And so what we did was we took our landscaping, all that commercial, that stuff that you typically see in a business park, and we converted it over to a fire smart landscaping. So we removed all of the plants and vegetation right up against the building. And we had a landscape architect come out and redesign, and then we planted using non-native plants. We broke up the fuel continuity, with pathways and different types of mulches, etc. And now it's a place where commercial property owners can go and look at it and see it's beautiful. When I used to walk out of the building every morning in that commercial, in our headquarters, I never really thought two hoots about what the plants were right up against the windows, right? And then when it was removed, initially there was a time period I was like, wow, that looks different, right? But then when we replanted in, and then over the course of the next year, as the landscaping began to fill in, now again it's beautiful, and I don't see it anymore. I'm like blind to the fact that we've made that change. And this is something that I think, that aesthetic, that if we can help people get over, that eventually it will become blind to them. Just like buckling up when you get into a car, or all of the safety features that are now a part of a car. When you drive, you don't really, it's protecting you in a passive way. That's the same thing that the landscape and the hardening does to a structure. It's like a fire, it's like an engine company protecting that building. That's like they're there, but they're not there. It's the same with automatic fire sprinklers. I don't know. It looks like you're in a sprinkler building, so you guys believe in that. So it's the same sort of thing. You want passive protection, because we just can't have enough firefighters to put them on every single building. So you need examples. You need places that people can go see that it works.
All right, do we have any questions online? We'll wrap up questions.
I have one more question. Bill, this is Robin Church again. Question, do you host garden tours of homes, of defensible space for homes?
So that is something that we are lining up. We're working with, we have one of the commercial landscape people on our board that is going to be the president of the Landscape Association California. So we are trying to set up through our master gardeners, as we get more and more of these homes and businesses that conform to the zone zero and fire adaptive yards, so that we can do those types of tours just like you would home broker tours for realtors. We want to take people around when we get enough of them to be able to show them. We are doing walks in our shaded fuel breaks for our communities. So we're limbing up, taking out dead and down up to 300 feet behind people's homes. That's that shaded fuel break. You saw a couple of pictures in that manual that I flipped through. We're taking people on walks in those spaces so that they can see. And there's also an added benefit to the shaded fuel breaks in that nature returns. You actually get wildlife that can move through those spaces instead of it being so choked out that they are not there. So there's all these added benefits to that, but I like your suggestion, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to continue to build on.
All right, we're gonna wrap up questions, just so we have enough time for roundtable. Bill, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today for that great presentation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll try and drop some stuff in the chat here. I'll stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, that would be great. And if you could, just go ahead and send me, if you don't mind sharing the slides from today. That way I can share those out as well.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alright, let's go ahead and do a round table.
The way I am.
I think you all know, I mean, listening to what Bill had to say, I mean, we've had a pretty active fire season this year. 6 of the conflagration fires in Oregon, 4 of them were here in Central Oregon. I'm actually the fire defense corps chief for Deschutes County, so that means I represent all the fire chiefs and fire departments. And it talks about dealing with the state and conflagrations. So we became really good at enacting conflagration fires, which we don't want to be good at. So, but I just want to say that the flat fire was an eye opener for all of us. It was pretty intense. It was a big firefight. Initially, we were limited in resources because the National Forest Service had moved everything to Montana and Idaho. And so it took us a little bit of time to get set up on that. But once we got going, we were prepared, and we did move in a lot of structural resources in way prior to that fire coming into the Sisters Camp Sherman, Cloverdale area. And to be able to save as many homes as they did and only lose 5 is a testament to defensible space and what that is, because what you're all doing in here is the game changer of about saving homes. If we don't have defensible space, it really limits our abilities to be able to get in and make a difference. And so all the work you're doing here, my hat's off to all of you. Be proud of all the work you do. Continue doing all the work that you're doing, because that's really the game changer. And Heather and all the work that she does, and everything else. So, and really this off season, we're still in fire season. We still probably have another month. But this off season, hopefully, people will be more proactive in doing the things that they need to do to protect their homes. So thank you. I want to appreciate everything that all of you do in this front. So that's it. Grant Solich, Grantland Management Services. We lately have been trying to do exactly what the gentleman who did the presentation described. Beautiful and effective landscaping. We're bringing in boulders, big Oregon moss rock, taking out mulch, making drain areas with decorative river rock, and just creating different landscapes for people. Also on the home side, doing a lot of the 1/8-inch meshing around foundation vents and eaves. Done a few, brush clearing jobs, taking out some junipers. And it's just been a lot of different stuff this summer. And then getting into the insurance compliance side of things. I met with the real estate group last week. Ben, Career Property, actually, and I talked to some of their brokers about, just informing their buyers and sellers on what needs to get done. And so that's what my company's been up to lately. And that's all I got.
I'm Kelly. I'm with the Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District. And we've been working on developing some post-fire support programs for folks. So I've been doing a lot of on the ground work, talking to landowners, seeing what they need, if they're interested in seeding or spraying projects, and how we could best kind of help them, and working well with the NRCS and their programs. So it's been really interesting to see kind of where people are at, think, a lot of folks who are affected really just wanna hit the ground running and get some projects going, so we're trying to work with folks to do that.
I'm Jen. I work for Natural Resource Conservation Service. As Kelly mentioned, we partner together to help out folks within the community, especially focusing on private landowners with the Marin fire and Black Fire. So we're kind of in the initial stages of working together. We're going to be holding a coordination meeting tomorrow. ODF, ODFW, SWCD, Farm Service Agency, we're all getting together to pull together resources. What do we have and where can we put those resources on the ground? Yeah.
Is FEMA a part of that?
I don't believe so. So yeah, again, initial stages, NRCS, again, focuses on private grounds. I think with the restrictions on our programs, they tend to be lengthy and we'll be focusing on maybe some herbaceous weed control and some seeding, potential deferment of freezing in some of those areas. So hopefully we'll have more information to share with the community within the next couple of weeks. But again, we're hoping to really provide some support for those local private owners.
Let's see, so yeah, with the wildland season starting to wrap up a little bit, I think, just regionally with our fire agencies, with the prevention co-op, we'll be circling back up and, getting our boots back down on the ground for, outreach and education. We've been taking a couple of months off, to do the response more side of things, and so, it's getting reorganized and planning for the next round of programs that we want to put out. We are trying to put together a wildfire home protection strategies class down in Pine in the middle of October, and our hope is to make that a contractor class as well, so we can offer CPs. Looking at October 18th in the morning to do that, so we'll get more advertising about that. More planning efforts around that, and then at OSFM, now that legislative season has ended, we've looking at trying to build some programs out based on results of some of the bills that were passed. So more to come. Lots of good stuff coming down.
The Newberry Regional Partnership is working with Heather and OSU Extension on the program that we're presenting on the 18th, the 4-hour presentation. We're also working on trying to get more involvement in the fire-free communities, creating more fire-free communities. It can be a little bit of a struggle because we have a lot of areas that have no HOAs or road districts. And so it's a matter of basically knocking on doors and bringing people together. And so it's a challenge at times, but every day we're just putting one foot in front of the other.
Great. So the fire actually was 3/4 of a mile from my barn and my house was closer, but there was a hay ranch that was watering during the flat fire. And the amazing thing is, after they quit dropping the water from the helicopters on a stand of juniper, that fire immediately ignited about after 6 on Saturday night and started coming down the ridgeline. So that's when I took out with my horse trailer and my cats in it, my 4 cats, that's where they got to spend a couple nights. But anyhow, that fire actually stopped. It came down the hill and it stopped. So the next morning when I came back to my house, I drove around and went over there and I went, okay, there was a bulldozer that actually had a 12-foot blade on it that went through that timber area and that fire stopped. Because it did cool down Saturday night, but that's how close the fire got to me. So I did originally, Craig Lentz isn't here today from Tamarack, but he came out to my house, oh gosh, maybe last April or something, cited some more junipers that I needed to take out from my property. And the good news was I finally talked my husband into doing that, and we had gotten rid of, because we're watering around our house and those junipers are even getting taller and taller because you know how they love to suck up water. So we'd taken out maybe 7 or 8 more junipers, but a really giant one, not maybe 30 feet from my house. Anyway, thank God we got rid of it. And the wonderful news is at the Sisters Fire meeting, Mariana came up to me and says, Patty, I've got your grant funding for the goats. So next spring, there's going to be money for people to have those goats come in and do clearance. And you know, we've got a herd of 500 of them in Terrebonne that they do amazing work. And that's really what I see, because if it gets through that grass, you know how fast it will burn, and if people can use more grass. And then the other thing, I'm sure the road department is not gonna wanna hear, but thank you to our road department for cleaning up one side of Holmes Road down from me. That really helped for defensible spaces. And honestly, I really think our road department should be doing that standard. In summer, they should be mowing the sides of roads, because you know, when anybody flips something out your vehicle, that could just give a greater protection to the entire community. So I'm sure, oh, Chris Doty isn't listening to me this morning, but I thank you for what they did. But honestly, I think it should be standard MO for just like chip seal, that we should be mowing by our roads, county roads. We have 900 miles of county roads. So it could be a big job for somebody, right? Yes, I know. Don't laugh at me. Anyhow.
No, I was thinking, maybe when I retire.
You are not retiring, you know that. So, anyway, no, you know, thank you to the community for what they did. In fact, at 11 this morning, I'm meeting with Ted Netter, who runs the rural fire protection people. He actually happens to be a neighbor of mine down Mackenzie Canyon. So we're having an 11 o'clock meeting today to discuss what's going on, what I saw. And there's an area down there that we keep having a lot of fires from that keep impacting us and in Sisters. So going to try and get to the bottom of that too. Yes.
Yeah, Dean Richardson, Upper Deschutes Rural Communities. We're regrouping and actively working on making some changes. So I'll update you later on. Hand it off to Greg.
Greg Bryant, Deschutes River Woods. Right now, we've got 4 20-yard dumpsters out, and I anticipate they'll be out there into November. And they're getting filled up every week, so.
All right, yeah, just a couple things. I know I said a couple of these earlier, but I just want to reiterate that our fall fuel reduction grant is open right now. So if you know of any communities that are looking for funding for fuel reduction projects, defensible space projects, they can rent dumpsters. It's pretty flexible funding as long as it's reducing fuel. That's open until September 30th.
And also in the spring, there's another opportunity.
For that one specifically, vent rental. This fall fuel reduction grant is broader, and we accept proposals for different ideas as long as it's on a community scale.
Yeah.
The dumpster rentals, that's just for vent rentals. And we work directly with. Yes, that's in the spring, and that will also be, we'll have that next year as well. And then we're still waiting to hear back from the grant applications that we have out from our department. I think that's it.
I'll just hit a couple of highlights. One's a biggie, big to me. Speaking of the flat fire, I would like to highlight that over the period of the flat fire, we had 3,500 new signups in our alert system countywide, 1,300 in a single day.
Wow.
Which is really great news, because there are other tools to get information out to people, but that is absolutely the single most accurate and effective and most capable way for us to alert people. Yeah.
Tell them how watch duty actually was way behind. At 3, I was told I was okay, 3 on Friday, and by 5:45, I was no longer okay. And if you were watching watch duty to keep informed, it was not staying up with current standards, because by 8, I was level 3.
Yeah, that, that fire, I think that fire struggled to, I think everybody struggled to keep up with situational awareness on that fire. We made an 8.5 mile run in less than one burn period, really, and thankfully they were able to hold it there at Holmes Road, or it might have gone a little further, but I was just actually pulling up some numbers. We did 22 alerts, individual alerts on the flat fire. 17 of them were on Friday, the 22nd. And it was literally like every 20 minutes, we're like, nope, change that zone to this. Nope, now we're going to that. And it was just constantly outpacing. So we utilize a strategy when we do evacuation planning. We develop what's called management action points. And so basically we look at the geography. We pick a location that we say, okay, if the fire hits this location, we're gonna have a decision point. It may be to issue evacuations, it may be to other actions. But those management action points, we got them established, then we're like, oh wait, it's already at our first one. And so we made the actions based on that one. They were like, oh, it's already at our second one. So it really I think, that fire just, it traveled quickly that day, and particularly on Friday. It was pretty challenging. So yeah, I think everybody had a hard time staying up, but we are thankful though that Watch Duty is pulling our evacuation zones directly because of the system we use. So they're pulling them out of the Genesis system. So theoretically, they should be getting fairly current updates. So we are thankful for that. So the other big news I just wanted to announce is we've had a restructure at the sheriff's office, and at the beginning of the year, I was promoted to lieutenant over special services, which left a vacancy in emergency management. And so thankfully, we recruited and hired a new emergency manager. In fact, his first day on the job was August 22nd. In fact, I was waiting at HR's door on Friday morning, like, hey, are you done with him? Like, sign quickly. We got to go to Sisters. And so we still haven't actually done the real job orientation thing, but and many of you know him. It's Ben Duda. Ben is a longtime Oregon Department of Forestry employee, a solid operational leader here in Central Oregon. I think 17 of his years' experience was fire protection supervisor in Sisters. So it was great when we were out in Sisters. I had literally probably the guy that knew that piece of ground better than almost anybody I know. So it was great. And so far, Ben's working out great. Super excited to have him. Really appreciate his kind of contemplative leadership and how he approaches problems. So really excited for what Ben's going to bring to the program and add to our phenomenal team, and really how that program's going to evolve into the future. I think we have the right people in those jobs to do it. So excited about that. So wanted to announce that. You'll probably start seeing Ben. I think technically I'm still on the committee until the commissioners appoint a new representative, but we'll work through that process. So you'll still see me when I can. So thanks.
Robin Church, Summit West Neighborhood District, and Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition Secretary, also Firewise Community leader for my own community. In terms of within Summit West Neighborhood District, we are continuing to our outreach to neighborhoods within that section of Bend, encouraging them to become Firewise, doing lots of wildfire risk assessments. And so we have 5 communities that have already been approved as Firewise, new Firewise communities. We have several more that are organizing, several more that are interested. So we are being successful, and our aim is to create a geographically connected network of Firewise communities in the northwest side of Bend. And it has taken a lot of time and energy and personal outreach, but to all of those of you who are doing this kind of work, I like you, it can be very rewarding, and then also be very frustrating at times, because it does take so much time and energy and commitment, but it's all for the good of the community. Also have reached out to other neighborhood districts within Bend. There are 13 neighborhood districts. Only Summit West is the only one that has an emergency preparedness lead. We have recruited folks to take on that mantle in the Century West neighborhood district. And then there's a person interested in the Aubrey Butte neighborhood area. So have also been working with Heather and with Melissa on outreach to other neighborhood districts. River West is one. Melissa and I presented to a community there. And by virtue of that, they are organizing as the first Firewise community within River West neighborhood district. I also reached out to Orchard District, and me and the chairperson met with them, and because they had questions about Firewise communities and the flammable vegetation code and so forth. So we have been invited to participate in the Orchard neighborhood district's family picnic, which is on Sunday, to answer resident questions about becoming Firewise. How do you become creating defensible space, wildfire risk assessments, yada, yada, yada. So we're beginning to make some progress with other neighborhood districts within Bend. In terms of the Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition, we are meeting in Sisters this Thursday afternoon from 2 to 3:30, and there will be a debrief on the flat fire. We'll focus on lessons learned from the flat fire and also ways in which the coalition might be able to support recovery. I think we're all interested in what type of structural protection was done by the fire crews, and because we'd like to reduce the amount of work that they actually need to do when these fires come through. So.
And that is, yeah, that's at the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire Department that's on South Ed Street. So if anyone needs any of that information, contact me, send it over.
So how many Firewise communities do we have now, and how many are in trend possibility of becoming certified?
That's a great question, and I don't have my computer in front of me to answer that question. Sorry.
We have 78 active, at least last time I checked. That number is likely gonna go up or has already gone up. It's probably gonna be in the mid-80s, I would guess.
I wish you told me we had more than 81, guys. That's the answer. Say 82 or something.
Optimistically.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. Yes, that's in the county.
And then Kevin.
Yeah, just a couple last things. You know, I just, again, want to thank everyone for all the hard work that was done this spring and leading into summer. We definitely got tested in Deschutes County with fires this year, flat fire notably. You know, there was some significant increases in work that was done this year that I think needs to be noted. You know, we had 45,000 cubic yards deposited at our landfills and transport stations during fire free this year. That was, our average is 29,000. So we were way above average. You know, things like the LA fire and other things kind of started that, but you know, that's a lot of coordination as well. There was also a ton more homeowner assessments that were signed up this year, notably Bend Sisters, and sounds like that's going to continue as well. And we had a lot of Firewise communities get signed up as well. So I think there's a lot of work that we're moving that needle forward, but you know, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate everyone putting in the hard work, because you know, the defensible space does matter, and we've seen results of that. So thank you.
Kevin, question. I know this probably just relates around how much it costs, but would it be possible to create 2 fire-free weeks or weekends a year?
Like a fall one?
Yeah.
Spring.
Yeah. That's probably a question for Tim and for solid waste. You know, it is really expensive to put on fire free. It is a pretty costly endeavor, and that's really been the limiting factor as to put that on in the fall, that and capacity. There was an unofficial event that used to occur in the fall that Republic Services used to host. They no longer have the funding or capacity to host that at this time. That's why we're kind of the situation we're in. We're really trying to bolster that spring one with adding our bin rentals and things like that. But at this time, I just don't foresee one in the fall.
Even if it were reduced rate.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It was half price, but originally when I asked the county to do fire free in the spring in 2020, they told me it was gonna cost $500,000. And I said, what does one fire cost Deschutes County? So somehow, Tom Anderson, I got it through. But, and you know, when they really expanded it, and actually this year's tonnage was really an awesome number. People really did step up, so, you know, we've definitely, let's hope they're gonna step up even more next spring. But then you don't want them to have it sitting there, smoldering over the winter.
Yeah.
So that's another side of the story.
What about with Mount Bachelor creating their, sorry.
They don't have any more capacity.
Yeah.
Well, creating their biomass.
They don't need any more of ours
Yeah,
to fill theirs.
it's more localized.
That's what they said.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. I was like, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, like, what's the big deal about that?
What?
Come on, everybody.